Hello, my name is Brandon Pence. This is Jacob.
Hello.
This is Bobby Joe.
Ciao.
And we are part of the WCS History Podcasting Group. Today we'll be talking about the Revolutionary War and what went on from the British side mostly.
So, what do you guys actually know about the Revolutionary War?
That was a war? I don't know a lot about wars. I know about World War One, World War Two, and remember it eventually. There's another war that was like after those. What was
It's not World War III.
That's next. We already know this.
Oh,
Are you talking about the Vietnam War?
Yes.
okay. So, I know that the Revolutionary War was a war, and I also know that what was it about? If I remember correctly, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it might have been when America was trying to gain independence. But then again, there were tons of revolutionary wars, so I'm not sure.
I got a question. Wasn't the one that had the Boston Tea Party is one we're talking about?
Yes, the American
okay.
Revolution.
Okay. So you got to be specific about that, because America wasn't the only country that had a revolutionary war.
Ireland had
Yeah.
one.
Vietnam, France, a lot of countries had one.
South Korea. Yeah. So what about the Revolutionary War?
So, I guess we can just talk about the Revolutionary War because a lot of people they look from the perspective of the American side and not actually what the British did. So, for example, a lot of people look at the Stamp Act and say, oh, that was bad. When you look from the British perspective, the British had already introduced the Stamp Act in Britain way before they introduced it into the colonies. So the whole outrage was only from their perspective, and the British couldn't really understand why they were, upset about it.
Yeah, because they were like, why are you upset about this? We've had this before.
Yeah. And also, the entire reason for the Revolutionary War to start is kind of ridiculous on the British part because Britain had just won the 7 Years' War, and they spent a lot of money protecting the American colonies. And they wanted America to pay for their protection, and they just didn't want to.
Can't they just not have had to pay though?
I mean,
Was this an optional thing that we had, or was it being forced on us?
Good question.
I guess you could say it was forced, but your army has fought for your nation, and you think you would at least pay a little bit to pay for the troops' food and the lives that were lost in war preparations.
If we don't need any more protection.
If we didn't have protections, France would be in control.
No, I'm saying after.
Yeah, there was several. There was, if I'm correct, there were several world wars during the time of the colonies before America was founded as America. In mainly France, which they came down from the north, up in Canada area, which it's still French up there. That's kind of the east end of Canada is still very French, but in the beginning they wanted to expand south, and of course the British at the time wanted that land, so they fought for it.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but also with Spain in the south, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Spain were also trying to take over the south, and the Native Americans did end up deciding to help out the colonies. Also, I think they did help Spain a little bit. They were kind of the middleman of everyone,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly.
Yeah, hired by everyone to fight each other. And
Yeah.
yeah, I know during the Revolutionary War, both the Americans and the British employed Native American soldiers, and oftentimes just pitted the tribes against each other.
Which,
Oh, wow.
yeah, that's messy.
Yeah, it's kind of
Very, very sad. I
So,
can just see you going up against your best friend that you've known since birth because of this.
yeah, it would suck.
yeah.
Anyway, back to the Revolutionary War. As you were saying, we want to look at it from the point of the British, and they wanted to enact the Stamp Act.
The Stamp Act, yeah.
I don't remember what that is because I didn't really pass history that well. Care to explain it?
Yeah, so in a very basic term, any paper product that you get from just anywhere, there was a tax on that. And a stamp was provided to show that you had paid for that item. So say I bought a deck of cards from you, and you would put a stamp on it, or not on it, but like a official piece of paper, and I would have to pay the tax that it, for that product to be imported to the colonies.
Okay, I get it. So basically, they just didn't want to have to pay for something that they had. It wasn't easy to get, but it was something that wasn't as expensive or difficult, and it didn't really need to have a stamp.
Yeah. I guess from their eyes it was unnecessary.
But I would agree, but maybe times were different back then. They were back different, but anyway, yeah.
Why don't they just do what we do today, put the tax on without us knowing?
Because that was not as easy back then, because you kind of gave money right then and there.
Yeah.
And also, we don't have to pay tax. Well, they're currently here where we are, we do not have to pay tax. But that is, that possibly has been tried to be changed by the state governor. Several people have been outraged about it. Anyway, that's not what we're here about. So, British got upset that the Americans, or the colonies, did not want to agree. And this caused the war to outburst, or was there something before that?
These taxes and new laws were essentially the lead up to it, but what really kicked it off was the Americans' protests, which having a colony in open rebellion back then was not a good thing to have, because it showed that your empire wasn't as strong as you claimed it to be, and people could defy you. So the British, not wanting to show this sign of weakness, tried to make them fear them a bit by putting military presence in, say, Boston, which led to more outrage and just escalated from there.
Didn't they give the military officers permission to go into any home and stay there?
Yes.
Yes, that was one of the big things that got many issues, because officers would use that, not just officers. I'm pretty sure people, I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume even people who weren't officers would pretend to be officers and probably sneak into people's homes and just be there. They could take advantage of people, they could harm them most likely, and they would not be able to do anything about it. It was those officers' rights at the time.
Yeah, and then if you look at it from the British perspective, they were doing that in every single colony, so not just America. So looking from their perspective, it's fine, so just waltz right in. And then from the America's perspective, which at this time before they got into direct contact with the British, were living in solitary neglect and essentially allowed to rule themselves. And then when the British heard that they were resisting, then that's when they became direct under control of the British Empire.
Yeah, so...
Didn't the British make a law or something to where only Britishes could be judges of the area?
I don't know 100% on that.
Because when I was doing my history class on the computer, it said something that the British made sure that only judges there, well here technically, would only be British. They could not be any other thing besides a British. Then didn't they send a, I want to say a lord or whatever they have over there here to make sure we did everything right? Mm-hmm. Wasn't the Roanoke colony the first person that had that?
I think so.
Because I was watching a TV show recently, and the second I watched it, I remembered that part, how the Roanoke colony disappeared 3 years after.
See, I've never actually heard of that, so...
You've never heard about the Roanoke colony that randomly disappeared?
No, sorry.
Really?
No, I have not.
I have. No one really knows what happened to it.
No one's sure, because it's very confusing. There's a lot of there's not many facts to back any of the theories up, and all of the hypotheses, they all have a little bit of info, but none of it is solid enough to link it directly to Roanoke. And there's one that they thought it was illnesses, one that thought, but it was one that didn't make any sense because there were no bodies. There was nothing left except for one pole that had the word Roanoke in it. Then they thought that the Native American tribes had the people of the colonies join into their clans or tribes. I'm tired.
Clans are more Vikings than
Yeah.
Indians.
You could technically call them that, I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was one of the theories. And then another one was they thought that everyone was slaughtered and then either buried or burned. And then, because it's the 21st century, there's probably someone who has said it's aliens.
But yeah, the main importance about this colony was the first child was born in that colony. The first recorded child, I should say, that was born from British blood, correct?
Yes.
So the disappearance of that colony does confuse a lot of people. But that was one of the first colonies that had one of the first lords ever to be actually stationed there completely.
Well, the thing that it's so strange about it is that there were no bodies. And usually, if we're going with the theory about the seas, the natives would not take the bodies when they knew there,
Yeah.
people were sick. They would just leave them there or burn them. But the fact that there were no bodies it's what makes it so strange.
My question
And
is,
even if there were no bodies and it was the method that they chose to burn the bodies, that wouldn't make sense. Because how would they go in? They would have known that people went in and decided to burn it, and there would have been evidence of the ground or the buildings being burned.
Yes.
Yeah.
my question is, how come they didn't try contacting the Native American tribes that were in the area?
They did.
They didn't say anything back?
No, they did. There wasn't, or I think what happened was they tried, but no one knew.
Magical.
Exactly.
But then that brings up a question. Do you think it could have been, say, a infestation of local wolves or some type of animal that
There
could
would have
have
been evidence of
Like
an attack.
blood.
There was nothing on the ground.
Nothing.
Weren't the house still there and all that?
Mm-hmm. It was just a ghost town.
So maybe, so maybe they saw all these wolves heading their way and decided to just up and leave and maybe disappeared in a forest somewhere.
That would,
But it was too many people.
yeah.
There would've-
It was a full
whole
colony.
Oh,
There would have
yeah.
been tracks at least.
Yeah.
Well, this thing could happen in between the 3 years. So your tracks take forever to fossilize. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, it was 3 years.
So anything in those 3 years, something happened that no one knows, except for the people in the colony.
Yeah, but I think we're getting a bit off topic of what we were originally talking about.
Yeah, you're right. We went from Revolutionary War to Roanoke.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
do you guys really know what started the whole, officially started the whole revolution and independence movement?
The tea
Not
tracks.
really, but if I think correctly, there was a militia that started to gather. It was just a small group of people at the start, and they were working discreetly, and they started getting people weapons so that they were armed, and they slowly worked together, if I remember correctly. But I don't know. I think there might have already been a militia before the British started to enact the taking or reconstruction of sorts.
Yeah. And I think you're partially correct on that, but from what I've mainly read is there's two things. the Boston Tea Party, where the Sons of Liberty went on board a shipping crate dressed as Native Americans and dumped a bunch of tea into the ocean or into the river, and that caused the British to send soldiers down, which were stationed throughout Boston, and especially at the Boston courthouse. I don't remember the building exactly, where colonists harassed that guard. And that guard called for reinforcements, so more reinforcements came, then more protesters came, then one thing led to another, and then shots were fired, and that started the Revolutionary War. And those shots and the massacre that followed were,
The Boston Massacre.
Yeah, Boston Massacre, which really drove people to think that these British armies, they're only here to conquer us rather than, provide protection. So then they wanted to rise up.
It was a large communication error, but it was also a fact that people were already looking for freedom at the time. They did not want to be part of British territory, because at first, the people who were in the colonies, they were people who were already trying to leave British territory for the reason that you had to be a certain religion. You had to go to a church, and you had to be active in the church.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. That also caused another outrage, is people were moving towards Native American settlements and started to set up camp there, and the British banned, leaving the colonies to go further west, which outraged a lot of people.
Moving west was something that was very sought against. I don't remember the name of the enactment.
I don't either.
But I remember reading about it, and it was one of the main causes for the Revolutionary War.
Was there hangings due to that?
There were probably few hangings, but there were probably a couple.
Yeah. And I read this interesting article talking from the British perspective about that occurrence, and the reason why they wanted to prohibit that is the Native Americans were already threatening the American colonies, and local raids and stuff became common. So they thought by delaying that, by appeasing them, by not letting people move towards their land, they could create a plan with the Native Americans to, kind of set up deals and territories layouts to actually let people colonize that area. So, but people didn't really know what the British were going for when they did that, so they saw it as complete ban of leaving the colonies.
Yeah.
And then, years later, America just started taking that land.
Yeah.
That was a big jump forward, but yes.
Yeah, big jump forward. We're still talking about the Revolutionary War.
Let's rewind a bit. Back to the Revolutionary War. So, we've talked about how it's gotten the Revolutionary War started. How about what happened during the Revolutionary War?
Well, I don't remember how many states actually sent delegates, but I know a lot of the states sent delegates to Philadelphia to talk about, what should we do about these British soldiers? They're coming into our colony, what do we do? And that's when they decided to, kind of fight back, because some people wanted independence. Some people just wanted to make amends with the British and rejoin the colony. But the ones who wanted to create a independent movement gathered local troops of local areas to form a sort of militia like you were talking about, and these became known as the Minutemen. People ready at a minute's notice. And, British soldiers were spotted, the Minutemen were instantly there and then called for reinforcements, which more Minutemen came to reinforce the position.
What's it called? I'm trying to think now. Never forgot.
You forgot?
Yep. Completely forgot.
Do you at least have an idea of what you were about to say?
It was something about the people of gathering.
The people of gathering. I don't think I've heard of that.
Well, not people of the gathering, but people that gathered.
Oh, the people that gathered. You mean the Minutemen or the delegates?
The delegates.
The delegates. No, I don't know much about them.
Yeah.
But was there many conspiracies of spies and all that too?
With any kind of meeting, there is going to be conspiracies of spies.
Which one is it?
There will always be conspiracies of spies as long as humanity exists.
You know, it'd be a kind of humorous in a dark way if, like, before every meeting they just shot one man randomly and hoped it was the spy.
Well, according to that, a lot of the delegates survived. I'm going to assume that wasn't the case.
I know, but it'd be kind of humorous in a dark way.
Imagine with the spy that was shooting them, though.
That'd just be
What if
hilarious.
that's a spy that's doing it?
Just
All
making
right,
sure,
to start
guys.
this off.
You gotta get rid of this guy.
Yeah. But after, this whole movement became a thing, they kind of elected George Washington as the general of their army, which is fascinating because he was a colonel of the British Army before that. So they had recruited someone of the British Army who knew the British tactics to join them to use those tactics against the British, which...
What if he was the British spy?
And one thing, if I remember correctly, that the British did not expect during the Revolutionary War was guerrilla tactics.
Yes.
Because during that time, they were used to formal battles. It was never battles happen anywhere. It was always battles were scheduled. You would be in a uniform. You would have your gun. You would be lined up in a line, and it would be a
Line
shooting
battles.
gallery.
Yeah.
Line
They were used to
battles.
combat that was honorable and, fought with
It
heart.
was known to be honorable.
Yeah.
They were
But-
called line battles.
Yes. It was honorable because, you're literally just standing in the line of fire, which was not smart. Then, during the Revolutionary War, they decided, hey, this could actually probably benefit us if we just don't go to these battles.
Yeah, because the American colonies weren't fighting wars of honor and freedom and all that. They were fighting for their independence.
Yeah.
They didn't care if they lost honor or whatever to the British eyes. They just wanted their freedom.
Yeah, it's especially bad that they stood in a line, considering the fact at the time they had muskets, which took forever to load.
No, the way it would work. It was one side. It was just one side would get to go first. They would load their weapons, take aim, and fire. Then, once that was finished, the people who were shot would either be walked over or they would be moved out of the way, and the other side would take their quote unquote turn.
Isn't this like the time period where the amendments? No.
No, that was after the independence.
Yeah, once they
Okay.
got independence.
Because I remember the number one thing people are still trying to take down is the Second Amendment, to where you have the right to bear arms, and this was the reason why we got that,
Yeah, it was
because the British was trying to take away
the
all
Second
the
Amendment.
weapons.
The right to bear arms was more the fact if the government became tyrannical, you could take your guns and go fight back.
At the time, the government was working to protect the people. The people and only the people. They were trying to protect their rights, their wants, and their freedom.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's different. That's a different, well, not so different time period. But the Revolutionary War was, I think it was. How long was it? I think it was 2 or 3 years.
I think I heard it was 4, but I could also be very wrong on that.
Yeah.
I'm not good with dates themselves.
Don't we supposed to have a guy on a computer that's telling us all this?
What do you think I'm doing?
He's the guy.
But anyway, so that actually brings. I still have a question. Who is your favorite person from the Revolutionary War? Like
George Washington.
George Washington?
I don't actually know that many people from the Revolutionary War. I wouldn't say George Washington though, because he wasn't, he wasn't amazing. He was amazing, but he wasn't perfect, and it wasn't. No one's perfect. Everyone has a little bit of bad in them, especially back then. I wouldn't say I had any favorites, because there's no really reason to have favorites in a war.
Yeah.
You
fair
just
point.
hear with the random guy that's in the middle of the war that was one of the complete survivors that didn't get shot once.
You know how like they were gonna light one candle if they were coming by land, or two if they were coming by sea. Are they gonna light three if they came by both land and sea?
So I
They
just
took both
figured
down.
this out. The Revolutionary War was actually 7 years.
Oh, 7 year.
Oh,
conflict.
sheesh.
Yes, it was a
That's-
7-year war, and yeah.
Are
It
you,
was-
are you sure you're not reading that it happened after the 7-year war? Because I know the 7-year war
No.
happened before it. Okay, well, that's a long time for independence. But I know George Washington almost lost the war in one of the very early battles when his army essentially got pinned down by a river, but fog set in, and the British decided to not charge their position, but rather set up fortifications, and allowing George Washington time to build rafts and cross the river with his army, which a lot of American soldiers were left there to, I guess, stall the British, more like it, but a lot of them that were captured were tortured and sent to POW camps by the British.
Mhm.
Yeah. And France at this time was all about giving America, not support. Did they actually give them weapons? I don't remember.
I actually didn't hear anything about the French during learning about the Revolutionary War, but thinking about it, if I'm thinking about it from the point of France, they not that long ago, they just were trying to take down the colonies. They were trying to move over them. So, if I'm thinking from their point of view, which actually there were laws in place where they could not try to take over it again, but they would probably try to do it again. But I think they did help.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if they did help us, I'm not sure, but if they were to, it would most likely we would lose a lot of people. So make it a lot easier for them to take over, especially if we lose ties with the British.
Yeah. And I know towards the end of the war, when we felt like proved that we were winning the war, France did join in the war, and they did send their French Navy and French soldiers to fight, which, you know, like you were saying, isn't really talked about in history books that much, because we always want to think, yeah, we did it alone, but in reality, France, Spain, and Denmark, or wait, no, not Denmark, Netherlands, wait, was it Denmark? Denmark or Netherlands, I don't remember exactly, all supported the American colonies and gave them weapons and helped them fight against the British. And the British actually had help from the Germans, or German mercenaries, I should specify, also helped the British, but captured ones could also, probably have helped the American colonies as well, since they were not bound to the British crown only by money.
The main thing Germans were known for in the Revolutionary War was that fact they're brutal, and they would actually usually kill themselves
Yeah,
with cyanide pills hidden in their tooth.
yeah. I thought that was World War II.
No, it was happening in World War One too. Cyanide's been a big thing in wars.
Mainly the Germans.
Yeah, and Japanese, can't forget them.
Oh yeah.
There's a
Old-fashioned
family
blade.
pack back in the World War II, to where if you ever thought you're gonna get caught, they would bite down on them and kill themselves, the entire family
Yeah.
of 7.
Yeah. Well, the Japanese Empire back then were very loyal to, if you're surrendering, you're dishonoring your entire family, and everything's gonna be bad for you.
So,
So it's
yeah.
best not to.
Yeah,
Do
you
so.
got
That's when they had the-
suicide.
Yeah. A lot.
the 5-inch blade that would go through your
I-
stomach.
Yeah.
Then someone would chop your head off.
Yeah. But
Usually.
once again, that's way off topic of what we were actually talking about.
You know what? We're off topic and on the topic of the Japanese.
Well, we're gonna move back onto the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here are the Here are the nations that were helping each side. The British were aided by loyal Native American tribes and just German troops. The American patriots were aided by a larger coalition of European powers, which included France, Spain, the United Netherlands, and officers of various European nations.
Yeah, I knew it was the Netherlands.
It was the Netherlands. You
Yeah.
were right.
Yeah, and I wasn't a lot of the American troops trained by a Prussian general.
Actually, I remember that. Yes, they were, and it actually was very efficient.
Yeah, because they learned military discipline and something that the Prussians were very good at, but once again, not different topic.
Yeah.
But the Americans learned these military doctrines and started implementing them, and the soldiers became more loyal and disciplined, making them better fighters. Yeah, so do you guys really know what made the British... Or first off, I want to go over one person in specific. What was his name?
Are you talking about the king at the time?
No, King George. The very interesting character, especially with everything that he did during his rule. But
yeah, if I remember correctly, he had a very interesting title for what he had done.
It in the Revolutionary War where he lost full control power and was put to someone else?
I don't know that.
Or was that his son
Didn't
that
he
happens
have like
to?
7
No.
wives?
I mean, not in Britain back then, probably.
We were kind of avoiding that, but yeah, that's correct.
if we're gonna be honest here, probably. But
He is a king, so they're allowed to have as many wives as they want, if I remember correctly.
yeah, but moving on. Benedict Arnold, I think that was his name. Traitor during the American Revolutionary War. I'm pretty sure that's his name. I could be very wrong about that, though.
Yes, military officer Benedict Arnold was a American military officer who served as a general during the American Revolutionary War.
Yeah, and he kind of led charge of a lot of battles and conflicts during the war, but he was never really recognized for those conflicts, which I'm assuming, made him want to switch to the British side. Because if you're fighting this war for people who don't even recognize you as, an efficient leader or general, you're gonna want to switch sides.
Yep, in 1780 is when he switched over to the British.
Yeah, and I believe he was put in. He begged to be put in charge of this one town, which he was going to surrender it to the British as a peace offering. But the British carrier that held the message of that surrender of the fort, or not fort, but town, was captured by American officers, and that's when they realized and noted that he had betrayed them.
Mm-hmm. West Point.
Yes, West Point.
Because George Washington had given him the fullest trust and placed him in command of the fortifications at West Point, New York.
Yeah, which, he tried giving away, so
Yeah.
misplaced trust, but...
Such good trust.
Good friends, good friends.
So, something that I found really interesting is what you were saying about the Native Americans helping the British, right? So, does anyone know a little bit more about that?
Actually, no. Not that I don't know anything specifically. The reasoning would be, of course, because what I'm thinking is the British were the ones who tried to enact the border of the West, which was what was stopping the Americans from going into the Native Americans' land. And of course, they wouldn't want to be invaded or pushed out of their homes, so join the side that is trying to fight for them and to keep them in control.
Yeah. And also, America didn't really pay attention to Native American lives during the war, kicking them out of their territories, which probably led to a lot of them wanting to rise up against America, or the American colonies. But as for Native Americans joining the American colonies, I'm not 100% sure why any tribe would want to do that, but I know quite a few did.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't a tribe. It was more individuals helping, because, it doesn't make sense to me. Most of them had a policy or, a way of dealing with stuff like this where they would be more like, this is not affecting me directly right now, so it's not my problem. Just, I have what I have and leave me alone,
Yeah. Also, I could be very wrong on this, but I thought I heard somewhere that the Americans actually promised the Native Americans their land back after the war.
They did, in fact, promise that, which was not something that they held up on, which in turn did cause another war.
Yeah, and that could have easily been why, I'm sure there's like a tribe or two that joined them. That's probably why they would have done so, is in promise of their land being kept, safe. And, it's either this person says that your rights are going to be saved, or this person is like, it's 50-50 chance.
Like, who do you trust? Who do you believe? The people who have been living near you for several years, or someone you haven't even seen?
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, which, led to tribes picking sides and all that stuff. So, yeah. Also, I'm sure the British weren't that nice to Native American tribes either, so that could have been another reason for their joining of the colonies.
No, they were not.
Yeah.
What do you know about individual battles?
Individual battles. The American Revolutionary War? Almost not.
Okay, so here are some statistics. 40,000 soldiers fought in the Battle of Long Island, making it the largest battle during the time.
Really?
The second largest was 30,000 for Brandywine, and the third largest was 27,000 participated in Yorktown.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm specialize in World War II battles and World War I battles, so Revolutionary War battles are not my specific thing.
A little different.
Yeah.
A lot different.
But, one person from the Revolutionary War I wanted to bring up was John Paul Jones.
John Paul Jones.
Have any of you heard of John Paul Jones?
That's Zeppelin, right?
No, I have not heard of him.
No, not that one.
I remember.
Johnny Appleseed?
No,
That was his name.
Tell us about him.
Naval
Well, I
Commander?
know nothing about.
John Paul Jones, depending on who you ask, may or may not have killed one of his own shipmates for doing something bad, which to the British eyes was a big don't do that. So he went to the American colonies and later became a admiral of the American Navy, which had just been starting out, and went to the United Kingdom and did various raids on cities in Britain and the British Isles. And then, interesting part is, his flag in a battle got blasted off and he didn't have a flag to replace it. So he went to the Netherlands, who were allied, and made a custom flag based off of what he said about the American flag, like what it would have looked like, what it was going to look like. And they made a flag based on that, and I think it's really cool. I think you guys should look it up because it's really interesting because it's blue and red. There's not really that much white other than in the stars, and I think it looks a lot better than what our flag is personally. Like right now, personally, that's what I think. But yeah.
Wow.
I'm guessing we should put that as our backdrop for this.
Hey, that could be a good idea.
There was white.
Oh wait, was there? I just remember it being
Now
dark.
the chairs start to squeak.
There was like 4 white lines, but the rest was like blue and red.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here. I'll show you guys.
Oh, that is cool.
Essentially, he was kind of a pirate.
Yeah, he was called a pirate.
Okay, so
So he was a pirate.
about
He used pirate tactics, yeah.
Pirate tactics were a thing. But about that, there were Navy battles. It wasn't uncommon to have Navy battles at the time.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was not that I can see. There weren't that many, but there were some.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that just because there wasn't any documented doesn't mean that there wasn't any.
Yeah.
There's some. It's wartime. If there isn't a battle that's documented, it might not have happened, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a battle.
Yeah, and what John Paul Jones was doing was mainly attacks on the towns rather than the British Navy. So
Yes.
yeah, but yeah, I believe John Paul Jones went on to fight with the French or Russian army after. I don't 100% know on that, but yeah, I just wanted to mention him because I'm doing an essay on him, and I think his story is really cool on just how he did things.
Would he be considered a pirate or a privateer?
Depends on who you ask.
Weird fact about him: he died July 18th, 1792, in Paris, France, but he was buried January 22nd, 1913, on the Navy Academy Chapelle, Anapois, MD.
Yeah. His sarcophagus is stored at the U.S. Naval Historical Museum, I think. I don't remember. And
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I've just seen it. It's like a marble thing, and it's stored there. And also his saber is stored there as well. So
interesting thing about the sabers during the Revolutionary time. When it was only battles of honor before the actual Revolutionary War, the sabers were a common symbol of victory. They would always have one for battle and one for decor. The one for battle was never fully sharpened. It was only ever sharpened on the tip. They thought it was too barbaric to have the whole blade sharpened, so they made it a stabbing weapon instead of slashing. Very interesting. And the reason that it was the best, they had basket hilts that were very commonly, I don't think it was made of gold, but they were sometimes made of gold, the ones that were for decor, and they commonly had gemstones put into them.
Like rubies and emeralds and stuff?
Not things like that, but yes, there were gemstones in the hilt of the weapon.
So
and they
like
were gifted to the...
topaz?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably like less rare gemstones.
Yeah. They were meant for looks, not value.
Yeah, because
I'm guessing this was for higher ranking officers.
No, it wasn't only higher ranking officers. It was, yes, the higher ranking officers probably did have better looking sabers or more expensive sabers.
like more elaborate.
Yes, elaborate. Thank you. But they, if I remember correct, most soldiers had a decor saber that would be given to the enemy if they lost.
Yeah, because you don't want blood on your ceremonial weapon now.
No. It was... Okay. So, we should cut it off now.
Yeah.
Anything left to say?
I think we should definitely talk about this topic more often because, or not just Revolutionary War, but topics from other people's perspective rather than just America's, because once you look at the whole picture, it kind of creates a whole new perspective to look through, and it's just kind of interesting. And this war in general is quite interesting.
Okay. Last couple of words. This was the WCS History Podcast. Thank you for listening.